Greetings, 4-H volunteers. Thank you for joining us for the 2022-2023 4-H year volunteer update for all certified volunteers in Snohomish County. This year's update will be brought to you by your 4-H County staff, Kim Baker, Dr. Ashley Hernandez Hall, our faculty member, and Beth Wangen. We'll be going over some policies and procedures, how to tell which volunteers are official ones and which are not, some club management tips to help you support effectively youth who are experiencing neurodiversity, autism, and/or trauma. We'll also go over some new things to know about record books and the new configuration of the Jacket Award, as well as some more rare awards that you might not be aware of. Finally, we'll go over the new system for reporting your volunteer time, known as Give Pulse.
Okay, so we're going to go through some quick policies and procedures. These are updates, nothing too terribly new. Our sign-in sheets and enrollment. So first, sign-in sheets. We've been talking a lot about sign-in sheets over the last couple of years because of the pandemic. It was very important for us to track who was at our meetings just in case we had to make some contacts about COVID exposure. However, sign-in sheets are still a requirement, and they have been a requirement for all 4-H activities. That means if you have a 4-H club meeting and you have youth and parents there and maybe siblings that aren't in 4-H or folks that are just observing, everyone needs to sign in to those meetings for a variety of reasons. Sign in is just good practice. It's good risk management practice. If you have to evacuate a building, for example, on your way out, you grab that sign-in sheet, you know who all was in that building, so you could do a roll call afterward. They're also very important for enrolled 4-H youth. If they get some sort of injury or boo-boo while at a 4-H event, we do have accident insurance that covers those injuries, but we need to make sure that they were there. We need to know that they were there for that to be covered. So anytime you have a 4-H activity, if it's under the 4-H umbrella and you're acting in your 4-H capacity as a volunteer, make sure that you have those sign-in sheets available for everyone to sign in. It's very important. And we also want to remind everyone that everyone needs to be enrolled in 4-H to participate in 4-H activities. So that includes your 4-H volunteers if you have any others in your club with you. Your 4-H youth need to be enrolled and their enrollment's approved. And that's what actually puts them under the 4-H insurance policies. So it's very important that everyone is enrolled. If you're not sure who is enrolled, you can send Helen an email. You can send the snoco.4h@wsu.edu email and ask for an updated roster. For 4-H volunteers who are club leaders, you have access to a roster in 4-H online, and that's something we can show you if you've never done that before. So again, reach out if you have any questions. But it's very important that we make sure everyone is enrolled, not just for things like the fair deadline, but for all activities, because that's how we cover our folks under insurance. We wanted to talk a little bit about Youth for the Quality Care of Animals, or YQCA. We've been talking about this for a couple of years in the policy updates. We did have a policy that was going to be required for anyone in an animal project. And I'm going to say that's still on hold. We are working toward that, and we're getting there. But there have been some changes in the system, and we do need to make sure that we have enough support on the county level to ensure that we can provide enough trainings for youth to make that an official, full-blown requirement for all of our youth in animals that are producing fiber animals or meat animals, things like that. But we really do recommend it for anyone raising an animal as a 4-H project. So more to come on that. We are working on getting some more coupon codes for youth. We know that many of the youth have to take YQCA for some of their non-4-H activities that they're doing with their animals anyway. So for those of you who have been looking for this as a requirement to be implemented and looking for 4-H trainers to be able to provide that training, we are still working on that as the state gives us more information. We talked a little bit in the past about low risk projects, and we do have an updated policy on that. I am going to share my screen on that and show you where you can find that policy in just a moment. Okay, so if we are any kind of Google search, if you do some sort of a search for WSU 4-H Snohomish County, hopefully it'll get you to our main page. Here's our main page here. I like to use this left-hand menu bar. This is the overview. When you go into that overview, you can see things there. But I also like to click on the resources. Resources is where you pretty much find everything you need to find, which is great. From there, you can find our updated policies and procedures. So you have the state 4-H program page here and the state 4-H policy and procedure handbook. But then you also have Snohomish County specific policies published over here. So this 7.3.1 is the policy we're going to be looking at right now. A member who wishes to enroll in a project that is not offered by their primary club may do so by one, enrolling in a secondary club that offers that project. That's the simplest way to do so. And then the member has to meet all those requirements outlined by that club. Or the member can enroll in the project if they have approval from their primary club leader. And they do the following. The 4-H member has to be enrolled in a primary club, and they have to enroll in the project in 4-H Online. So just a quick pause here. So we're looking at A here. That's where we come in. So if you as a club leader or as a volunteer is interested in helping a youth facilitate a new project, even though their club doesn't currently offer it, just contact us. This is a contact us kind of a thing, and we're going to help you because we're the ones who have to modify those projects in 4-H Online for youth. So 4-H staff can guide members in enrolling in the projects not found in their primary club. And then members must follow the rules and guidelines created by the program that contains that project they're enrolling in. So again, a quick pause here. If a youth is in a club that offers, let's say, just horses, but they're very interested in robotics, they would be following the guidelines that are outlined in the technology program if they do that. So this includes event and activity participation, meeting attendance requirements, fare requirements, and safety rules. Keep in mind, this does not apply to animal projects, shooting sports, and food preservation. And then there are some other high-risk projects that may also require enrollment in a club that offers that project. And this is mainly due to safety concerns. So with shooting sports and food preservation, those actually require a volunteer that is certified in those projects. So they have actual extra volunteer education that they have to undergo before they become certified to teach those projects. So those aren't projects we would allow a youth to enroll in if their club does not offer it. And then animal projects we're a little bit more worried about because we're dealing with a living, breathing, feeling creature. So we want to make sure that they have appropriate supervision in those projects. There may be some other higher risk projects that we may or may not offer right now. Something such as, let's say, some sort of motorsports, ATVs that may require specialized supervision from a project leader. So the takeaway here is let us know if you have a youth that's interested in trying out photography or creative arts or foods. Give us a call and we'll help facilitate that and help you decide if that's appropriate for you to facilitate for the youth in your club, even though you don't have a project leader for that. Please note that the fare entry, some projects may not allow fare entry if a member is not enrolled in a club that offers that project. That's really a program level question. And if you have that question, just let us know and we'll connect you with the program leader to answer those questions. Okay, back to our slides. The frequently asked questions was actually something we did with our live club and club leader and administrative volunteer update. So if you did not attend that and you're watching this online, that's great. We're happy you're watching it online. If you do have questions that aren't in here or that we don't cover in a later slide, please feel free to email any of us.
When it comes to safety, it's important that everyone in the club knows who the certified enrolled 4-H volunteers are. Why is this important? Because certified enrolled volunteers are the people we trust to supervise youth. They are the people who are allowed to handle 4-H funds and to be on 4-H bank accounts and they can have access to contact information of club members they need to communicate with. So how can you tell who the certified enrolled volunteers are? The club leader has access to the list of club members, including adult volunteers, through 4-H Online. 4-H Online is the only way to know that an adult is an enrolled certified volunteer because their status will appear as approved. Now, I want to tell you about some mistakes that have happened in this area because we can learn a lot by sharing mistakes. It has happened in our 4-H world that an adult thinks they are an enrolled volunteer, even though they're not. Maybe even everyone in the club thinks this person is an enrolled volunteer because they help out all the time, and it only becomes known that they're not a certified enrolled volunteer when they try to get discounted fare tickets or someone nominates them for a volunteer award. So it could be that this person used to be enrolled, but they just haven't kept up their enrollment every year in 4-H Online. Or maybe they submitted an enrollment in 4-H Online, but they never went through all the necessary steps to become an official volunteer, like the application, interview, references, online trainings, and the background check. Or maybe everyone knows that this person was an enrolled volunteer last year, but this year they're not showing up on the roster. So it could be that they're due to renew their background check and they just haven't done it yet. Another thing that happens is that they might not have clicked on your club name in 4-H Online, and that's why they don't show up on the roster. So all of these problems can be fixed. If they didn't click on the club name, we can add it. If they're missing a step, I'm happy to help them through that process. So I strongly recommend that each club have some kind of ritual to welcome newly certified and enrolled volunteers so that everybody knows who they are. This could be as simple as having a standing agenda item to introduce new volunteers, or as silly and fun as a dance or a song that the group performs to welcome new volunteers. Take your pick, just some way to let everyone know who the real certified enrolled volunteers are. Now, during your time as a 4-H volunteer, if you become a project leader, be sure to take the classes for project leaders, in particular, the prerequisite class called Project Leadership. It's only a couple of hours. You deserve guidance on how to be a good project leader, and we honor your commitment to lead our youth by providing that training. The volunteer classes that are coming up will always be announced several times in the Clovergram, your Friday 4-H newsletter, so be sure to check out the headlines. Or you can also find the upcoming trainings on our volunteer education webpage. I'm going to show you that page now so you'll know where to find it. This is our 4-H homepage. And right here is a button that says volunteer education. If you click that, you go to a page with all kinds of offerings and opportunities to learn more to help you as a volunteer. Right here is the 4-H volunteer continuing education that's coming up this winter. And if you click on that link, it will take you to the Sign Up Genius that also lays out which classes are required for what type of volunteer. So there you have it. Let me know if you ever have any questions about volunteer education or how to get enrolled or why your enrollment isn't showing up on the roster.
Okay, so I am going to be talking to you for the next several minutes and several slides about some club management questions that we've had from several different folks when they're working with the youth in their club. So we're going to be talking a little bit about neurodivergence. We're going to talk about what it is. We're going to give two examples, specifically the autism or being on the spectrum and trauma exposure. And then I'm going to finish up with some resources for you. So neurodivergence, what is it? So it's very simply defined and oversimply defined as a difference in mental or neurological functioning. So folks who are neurodivergent might have different strengths. They also might have different challenges from people who are considered neurotypical. So this could include medical situations, learning differences, emotional regulation differences, or many other conditions. So examples, sorry about all of the incoming acronyms here, might be ASD or autism spectrum disorder. We might see folks with dyslexia, attention deficit and hyperactive disorder, Down syndrome, post-traumatic stress disorder, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. We have obsessive compulsive disorder, Tourette syndrome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these kind of fall under that umbrella that includes folks with neurodivergence. So these are all things that we want to keep in mind when we're working with a variety of youth from our community. Some of them may have any of these conditions, or even sometimes multiple conditions. That might mean that they have different strengths and challenges from other folks in your group. So let's talk about two to give you a quick example. And then of course, we're going to follow up with some tips on how to make your clubs as inclusive and healthy as possible. So autism, the term neurodivergent is often used for individuals on the autism spectrum. Autism is a developmental disability, and it's caused by differences in the brain. So we're starting to see, as research is expanding in this area, different, structural differences in the brains of folks with autism. It presents as challenges with social communication. We also see some social interaction challenges, and you may also see some restricted or repetitive behaviors in folks with autism. Individuals on the autism spectrum often have different ways of learning, moving, and paying attention. Sometimes this is very different. Sometimes there's a minor difference from the neurotypical folks you might have in your club. When we talk about trauma, this could be something that impacts youth from very long ago in their past, from very recent in their past. And this is not just something that we want to think about when we're working with youth, because in 4-H, we're really not just a youth development organization, we're a people development organization. We interact very heavily with the adults in our youth's lives as well. Trauma is the emotional response that results from experiencing a distressing event. It's important to understand that folks who have exposure to multiple traumatic events or prolonged traumatic events have increased likelihood of developing lasting symptoms. So if a youth has experienced trauma over a long period of time, say a whole year, the likelihood of developing those lasting symptoms is much higher for that youth. This is a lot of the work in this area, especially about youth and trauma, and then how that impacts their later functioning, was done with the kind of groundbreaking ACEs study. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And we found that the more adverse childhood experiences a youth has in their life, in their early childhood and then their later childhood, the more likely they are to have negative outcomes later on in life. Symptoms and trauma, they vary from person to person. They're widely vary depending on the person and the severity of the trauma or the severity of the emotional response. But they typically include things like a heightened startle response. So you might see someone that's a little more jumpy. Sleep disturbances, maybe they're sleeping too much or not enough, or they're frequently woken up from their sleep. They may have trouble concentrating, especially if that sleep is poor. They may have what is considered anger or aggression. However, often those are fear responses. We can talk about it a little bit later. They may have guilt and shame. They may express that guilt and shame out loud. And they also may have problematic coping behaviors. Sometimes we might see youth who throw a project that they're very frustrated with. They might throw it away. We might see youth quitting activities that they enjoy, pushing folks away that they enjoy usually being with. And then, of course, what we're very concerned about is things like coping with substances, drug or alcohol use. So what do we do in these situations? We recognize fully in the 4-H world that you all are volunteers. You're not trained social workers, and we don't expect you to be. But we are hoping that with this information and with this knowledge, it'll kind of help equip you to recognize a youth that maybe, may have a different way of learning or different way of coping with external stress. And hopefully that'll help kind of empower you to explore how best to support that youth as you go. I'm going to talk a little bit about those next two slides are going to be a little bit of brain history or a little bit of brain science. And then hopefully we're going to tie it together at the end with what do we do with this information? How do we then put this information into action in our clubs? So I hope this helps you kind of think through how to support the youth in your club. So I enjoy this particular view. We're going to pretend this is a brain here. This is a brain, an upside down pyramid is what I call it. But Dr. Bruce Perry, he wrote the book, What Happened to You? It's a very interesting book if you're interested in reading it. If you need to borrow it from me, let me know. I'll get you my copy. But Dr. Bruce Perry introduced this upside down pyramid as a way of looking at how our brain processes incoming information. So we can look at the brainstem here. This is at the base of our brain, right there where our head meets our neck. And it processes, or it brings in information from the outside world. That might be anything from our five senses. We might smell, hear, touch, taste, or feel something from the outside world. But the brainstem also pulls in the information from inside of our body. Maybe we have a tickle, or maybe we're not feeling particularly well. Maybe our heart's beating a little faster, some sort of physical response within our body. And all that information, all that sensory information is brought in through the brainstem. And then it's filtered right up to the diencephalon. And this is a really interesting part of our brain. I like to think of it as just a relay processing center. So all those inputs are brought into the brain, and then they are processed through the diencephalon. And then they go into our limbic system. Now, here is where we decide, or not really decide because it's not a conscious decision, but our brain creates some sort of emotional behavioral response to a stimuli. So, for example, if we have a stimuli like a burning sensation in our fingers because we're touching a hot pot, our limbic system would have us pull away our hand very quickly, and we might have fear and anxiety and anger or whatever response to that pain. All of that happens in the limbic system. Now, please keep in mind, I'm telling you this process. This is a neurotypical process for how we figure out what our senses are telling us. So we have that sensation going to the limbic system, and then from there it filters up into the cortex, or the reasoning center of our brain. This is the prefrontal cortex, and that's where we actually use our logic and we make decisions and we interpret the emotional response to the stimuli. So let's go to the bottom here, the five senses, and let's use one for our neurotypical youth experiencing a fireworks show for the first time. So what are the senses we might have? We're definitely going to have sight, bright lights, shining fireworks. We're probably going to have a sense of touch. We might feel the concussive explosion from the fireworks in our body and our chest. We're definitely going to have sound, loud booms, and we're probably going to have smells as well. We might smell sulfur, we might smell burning. We might also smell all of the smells associated with fireworks shows, like if your hometown has a fair, you might smell fair food. Things like that. That's what you're going to be sensing when you have a fireworks show. So those fireworks are exploding. All of those senses are going through the brainstem and put into our diencephalon. And then they're processed through and up into our limbic system. So again, we're talking about a neurotypical person who doesn't have any particular emotional attachment or anything to explosions or to fireworks. So we might feel a variety of emotions in this. We might feel excitement, we might feel a little trepidation, joy, and a sense of wonder. All of these things happen very quickly without our knowledge or consent. Our brains are doing this automatically. But then our brain filters that up into our cortex, and we get to start thinking about and interpreting this. This is where we ascribe a certain emotion and feeling and basically decision making around a fireworks show. So if this is a positive experience for us, we might think fireworks shows are amazing. And every time we see a fireworks show, we might even flash back a little bit to that memory of our first fireworks show when we were young and feel a sense of nostalgia and joy. We might decide that we want to make fireworks or learn how fireworks are made. This might be a very important moment in our time, or it might be something that we were like, meh, not particularly exciting, not my thing. But now let's shift it. Let's go back to the fireworks show. We're just sensing this information, and let's look at it from a youth who's experienced trauma that might be associated with loud sounds, loud explosions. So if we have a youth who's had, let's say, experienced a very severe car accident, and that car accident, there was loud sounds, so explosions, there was fire, so flashing lights, there was the smells of like burning rubber and burning fabrics, things like that. And then of course there was the fear. There may have been pain if they had an injury. There may have been a fear that they were going to be severely injured or even killed. That trauma means that our brains have now attached certain emotional and decision-making meaning to these particular sounds. Not everyone responds in this way to a traumatic event, but many people do. So when we have that same firework experience going up into the diencephalon and then into the limbic system, instead of a sense of wonder and excitement and slight trepidation, our memory of the trauma, our brain's memory of the trauma, instead feels explosions, hears explosions, sees flashing lights, and is now saying, I know what this is, and it's creating a fear response in the person. So this youth, instead of feeling wonder and excitement, is now feeling intense fear. They may be having a physiological response. Their heart might be beating harder. Their adrenaline starts pumping. And here's the hard, problematic part with trauma. The processing of those senses slows down exponentially, and it's not really getting up to the cortex or the reason center of our brain. Instead, our brain has decided that we're in trouble, that our body needs to be protected, and it's going to kind of get rid of anything else that's not that important, including emotional interpretation and decision-making, and instead focus solely on keeping our body safe. I say that because it's very important to understand a youth who's having a fear response in our presence because of, let's say, a car backfires outside. Having a reasonable conversation with that youth at the time is probably not going to work particularly well because they don't have access to their cortex. So going a little bit more into this and what it looks like to work with youth in this situation, I always like to go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you didn't take psychology in high school or college, or you don't know a lot about it, it's okay. You don't have to know this stuff very deeply. But what Maslow taught us was that our needs are kind of a step process, and they start at the very bottom. And if the very bottom, very basic needs of our youth or ourselves are not met, it's very hard to move forward, especially to process new information, learn new skills, or create lasting, healthy relationships. So in the case of our youth who's experiencing fireworks and is experiencing fear and anxiety, maybe their biological and physiological needs are being met. So they do have air, they're not hungry, they're not thirsty, but this safety, they don't feel safe. They are in need of some sort of safety and security and order and stability in their life before they can move on to, processing what a fireworks show really is. But if we can meet those biological, those physiological, and those safety needs, we can start moving on and helping the youth in our program have that sense of belongingness, have affection, and develop strong and lasting and important relationships. We can also have them work on achievement. That's something that we do very well in 4-H. Give them more responsibilities, and then hopefully teach them new skills and get them to a point where they're getting up to aesthetic, self-actualization, and transcendence. This is the point when we're ascribing a lot of meaning to our life. Like all of these experiences have been kind of building up to this. So again, sorry for the psychology lesson here. Moving forward, what does that mean? How do you, as a club leader working with youth, maybe you don't have a social work or a psychology or psychiatric background, so what do you do with this information? It's a little simpler than you think. I hope it's a little simpler than you might think. Supporting youth when we recognize they may be neurodivergent, they may be processing or experiencing stimuli in a different way than someone who's neurotypical. Really, some of the first things we can do is just pause, take a break, slow everything down. If we have a youth that's having a fear response that were triggered by something in their environment, please keep in mind they probably don't have full access to their cortex right now. Their reasoning centers of their brain are not working at full capacity. Instead, their bodies are telling them they need to get safe. They may feel a need to escape, to run, or they may have just shut down and just trying to kind of regulate and get to a regulated state internally. So pause, take a break, do what you need to do to slow everything down. Help them move from a dysregulated internal system to a regulated one. That may mean if a youth is pacing because they're uncomfortable, move with them. Don't try to restrict that movement. Sometimes rhythm helps. Have you ever noticed that being around waves in an ocean helps you feel calm, or walking or rocking back and forth, or the natural movement a parent might do with an infant in their arms? That rhythm is actually very calming to the human body. So if a youth is very dysregulated and you're not sure how to help, could you go for a slow rhythmic walk? Could you start coloring on a paper that doesn't require a lot of hand-eye coordination? Maybe you just do long rainbows. If you know the youth well, or if you're comfortable trying a breathing exercise, helping them slow down and regulate their breathing. I know that touch is something that we're a little anxious around, especially with youth, but oftentimes touch is very helpful. And we can ask permission to touch. Would you like to sit here and hold my hand? Or even better, do we have a parent or a relative nearby that wouldn't mind giving a hug? A lot of times it's very natural for youth in special friend groups that are really good friends to put an arm around their friend and help them. Don't discourage that. That's okay, as long as the youth in question is comfortable. And of course, we're asking permission. Work on maybe focusing energy on something they can start to control and regulate with, like their senses. What are they hearing? What are they smelling? Meditation is fantastic, and so is positive thinking. If somebody is feeling very anxious about an upcoming presentation and they're having an intense fear response because of that, start to look at, what's happening in the next 10 minutes, in the next hour, and the next 5 hours, and get to a point where things can turn more positive, even though the presentation might be scary. We always encourage you to check in with the individual and parents. If we recognize or we're concerned about a youth, check in with them. Hey, I noticed that you seemed a little anxious and you walked away from the activity we just had. Is there something I can do to help support you? So just checking in with them. They may just need space to stand in the back, or they may just need a few more breaks than other people. And that's totally fine and acceptable, and we can help with that. Always a good idea to check in with parents or guardians to see if there's something in particular that we can support youth with. We need to do our best, if we can, to modify our interactions, our behaviors, and our expectations. If we have a youth who has had trauma exposure, maybe has OCD, maybe has been diagnosed with ADHD, or is on the autism spectrum, how can we modify our club within reason to help support that youth? If it's something as simple as keeping doors open at a club meeting, or allowing youth to stand in the back, is that something that we can accommodate? And I think that's a pretty simple one. If we have certain words that we're using that maybe are a little bit uncomfortable for a youth, or if we are in a space or we're doing activities that produce a lot of really loud sounds, is there some way to filter those out? And then, of course, our own expectations. Sometimes it's hard if we've worked with the same group of youth for a long time and a couple of new youth come in and one of them is neurodivergent. It's sometimes hard to modify our own expectations and our own rhythms for our group. But it's also very important to foster a sense of belonging, and modifying expectations such as due dates or attendance might be necessary in this case. What works for our club and our youth, work on what works for both our club and our youth with our unique needs. So again, check it out, have that conversation with the youth themselves, see if there's some way you can support them, have that conversation with the parents, and then please always reach out to us if you need to talk about specific accommodations, especially if those accommodations are things we have to purchase, because we do have some state funding that can help with that. We have a few resources here that might help. I teach a conflict management class. This is a 2-hour workshop that really goes into how to manage behaviors and conflict when it arises. And I do talk a little bit in that, actually quite a bit in that workshop about how to have empathetic and calming conversations and how to come up with solutions to conflicts. I also teach youth and adult mental health first aid. This is an 8-hour training specifically focused on emotional and psychological non-crisis and crisis situations that arise in youth and adults and how we can respond in those situations. So please reach out to me or anyone on the 4-H staff if you are interested in taking additional education there. We also have the Snohomish County 4-H volunteer education page, which again, I'm going to show you that website really quickly. All right, going back here, I'm going to go back to our homepage. There we are right there. And we have volunteer, although you can get it here too, volunteer education. But I tend to always click on volunteer because I can get some other fun stuff there as well, opportunities and things. But if you click on volunteer education, you can find some information, including the other resource that was on that slide, which is the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. So this is an area that you can find some pre-recorded trainings that were offered and hopefully some live ones in the future. This is also our volunteer or youth mental health first aid. These are the next classes that'll available. Saturday already passed, so we'll update that for you. But I offer them pretty regularly throughout the year. And of course, we are always here to help. We're here for consultation. Going right back to that website. And I know this has been shown several times in several different areas. Going back to our homepage, this little window here, virtual office hours, 3:30 to 6, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Please pop in anytime you have questions or you want to consult about a particular situation, and we will do our best to help you with that.
All right, Kim Baker here to pick up our next topic, record books. Record books have been a staple in 4-H since it began. We use records every day and in a variety of ways, like tracking our hours and expenses so we can get paid, keeping track of birthdays and vacations or other events that are important to us. We keep updating our resumes, creating shopping lists, setting goals, meeting deadlines. So there's really no argument that learning to keep a variety of records is beneficial. I think the challenges we see boil down to the generic record book itself and the frustration of trying to stretch its limitations into one size fits all. For some projects, an ad sheet can provide a place to record that specialized information needed. For other projects, and even to meet some specific individual needs, no matter how we modify it, the traditional record book doesn't really work very well. So over the years, volunteers and 4-H staff have worked hard to address those challenges and provide options to accommodate a variety of scenarios. While helpful, that in itself may have caused confusion as several different versions of record book and score sheet became available, leaving some to wonder, which one are we using now? Add to that some clubs and projects don't require record books at all. Some do. For those that do, specific deadlines and requirements may or may not be written down anywhere. And our guidelines were written quite some time ago, and they've been photocopied so many times they're becoming unreadable if you can find them. It seems like the frustration can overshadow the benefits. Clearly, record books need strong resources that accommodate needs while providing structure for our members to learn and our volunteers to guide them. So, do we have good news today? Yes, we do. New resources have been uploaded to the record book page of our website. The website has also been reorganized a little bit. These new resources include Record Book 101 information and a simplified score sheet. These resources have been created through collaboration with volunteers and by compiling good things from multiple sources. If you have old resources or score sheets in your files, or maybe linked on your website or Facebook page, we encourage you to replace them with the new materials. And as you use them, let us know what you think. We hope you find the new resources flexible enough to meet your needs, but there are very likely circumstances that will need special consideration and care. And for that, our amazing volunteers are the key. No matter how accommodating we make a score sheet or a process, it's our caring and insightful volunteers' attention to individual needs and their efforts to help our youth find relevant connection that really make record books work. Thank you for that. And let us know how we can help you continue to make such a huge difference in the lives of our members. Jacket Awards. Well, the outcome of the Jacket Awards this past fair identified some areas where the application or nomination and the score sheets could be improved for both member and volunteer processes. So we invited volunteers and 4-H members to help us with these revisions, and we received some incredibly valuable input. As a result, a new 4-H member jacket award application and a new evaluation process have been created, and these have been uploaded to our awards website already. If you have old applications and score sheets, please replace them with these new resources. We're now turning our attention to the volunteer nomination process and hope to have that revised by mid-April. So if you missed the all-call for the member jackets, but you have interest in helping with the volunteer forms, you can email or call me to let me know. My email and phone are on the slide, and your voice is needed and appreciated. Thank you so much.
Hi, this is Beth again, and I want to talk to you about some rare awards. They're not rare because they're hard to get. They're just rare because very few youth ever apply for them, or in the case of adult volunteers, very few volunteers are nominated for them. So let's go find them. First, you want to get to our resources page. You can also find the awards from our members page, but it's a little more direct from the resources page. So right here under awards and grants, you click on awards, and there you go. The awards for youth are categorized together, the awards for volunteers, and then the awards for our community supporters, which is an award called the Friend of 4-H Award. And this is for people who are not 4-H volunteers, but who are assisting a club or really helping our county 4-H in some significant way. So I want to point out to you a few awards that you may not have heard of. Awards for youth include some national awards, but also for our county, we have the Outstanding Exhibitor Award. This needs to be a senior level 4-H'er who has exhibited at least 2 years at the Evergreen State Fair. We have up to 6 finalists every year, but it's rare that we get more than 6 seniors actually applying. So encourage your outstanding senior exhibitors to apply for this award. Achievement pins. In a typical year, we have between 1 and 4 achievement pins that are awarded, and usually not more than that have applied for that award. So if you have youth who are outstanding in their project, encourage them to check this out. There are different instructions for each project. So once you click on this link, you'll see all the different projects for which there are achievement pins, and then the youth can apply for them. Under the awards for adult volunteers, there is also a national award there, but for our county, we have some lesser known awards. The Impact Clover and Outstanding Volunteer Patch. These differ in terms of who can nominate a volunteer for volunteer to receive one. So members, parents, other volunteers, all sorts of people can nominate for these different awards. And sometimes one of those awards is not even given out in a year because nobody was nominated. Snohomish County 4-H Volunteer of the Year, we have 2 of those, or sometimes only 1, but up to 2 are allowed per year. And then Jacket Awards I skipped over because that is one of our better known awards for youth and for adults. And Club Seal of Achievement we covered last year. So definitely check that out if your club wants to get a Seal of Achievement. More on that coming soon. But think about who else outside of 4-H has been very helpful to your club or your program, and think about nominating them for a Friend of 4-H award. We have such amazing humans in the 4-H program. Let's recognize them and celebrate them and get those awards going. Howdy volunteers, Beth Wangan here, and I'm going to answer my favorite and most frequently asked question this year. How do I report my volunteer time? WSU is using a new platform, university-wide, called Give Pulse, and it's a little different from the old platform. Many people have told me it's easier. So a first review of why it even matters whether you report your volunteer time. First of all, volunteers are covered by L&I insurance in the event they are injured while volunteering. And the only way WSU knows how much to pay the state in insurance premiums is, you guessed it, if the time is recorded in Give Pulse. The second reason is investor confidence. Well, who invests in us, you might wonder? Snohomish County does, for one. The county provides facilities, staff time, and other resources. So it's a really great return on their investment to show that our volunteers give, 40 or so full-time equivalents in donated time, but we need documentation, and that's where Give Pulse comes in. So how do you do it? Well, I'm going to show you. The first thing you're going to do is go to givepulse.com. And once you're in there, you'll see this sign in button right there. There it is, sign in. And you'll click that puppy. Click. And that will take you to a login screen with a few different options. You can log in with Facebook, Google, or just put in your email address and password. Once you get in there, you will have 2 options for what you can do first. At some point, you're going to have to find the word impact, add an impact, and at some point, you're going to have to pick your group. So I'll show you how to do it in this order. Let's pick our group first. We're looking for the group that has the word Snohomish County 4-H in it. You may be automatically subscribed to some groups at higher levels like WSU 4-H Youth Development and WSU Extension, but unless you're doing volunteer work at that level, you're going to stick with this group down here, the County 4-H group. So click that group, and that will take you to another page where you can look for an impact. How do I add an impact? Impact is what Give Pulse calls all of your volunteer time. Everything's an impact. So look, here's this nice blue button that says Add Impact. Let's click that. Now on your Add Impact page, there are 3 different ways that you can report your volunteer time. So let's look at those one by one. The first question you'll see is, did you attend a listed event or volunteer opportunity? That means it's on this list. Click the drop-down arrow. We don't have a whole lot of things on there right now. I am the only one who is adding things to our list. And I'm waiting until we have authorization and people are a little more familiar, and then more people will be able to add events. So if you attended an event that's here, you can just click on this. Let's say council meeting. I went to the council meeting. It'll say, oh, which date did you attend? Click the drop down again, and there are the options. Well, we just had one in March. I attended that. Great. The hours are already listed, but if you need to add hours for transportation, you can do that. Remember, transportation hours count. And then what type of activity was it? Well, you get 4 options here, and these are going to pop up every time you enter an impact. So you need to try to figure out whether it was a club activity, something beyond the club, like a county level activity, a community service activity at any level, club, county, whatever. If it was a 4-H community service activity, it goes here. Or was it an organizational meeting, like your program level monthly meetings, or the council, that counts as an organizational meeting. So we're going to click that one. Then there are some boxes where we can enter notes and reflections, but we don't have to. It's all optional. Everything else is optional. You'll see one little teeny tiny required asterisk here, but you can't change that one. So we just go to add impact, and there it goes. I can also register for that event ahead of time, and then it'll just send me an email or whatever notice I choose that says, hey, you registered for this event. Did you go? And I can click yes, and then I'm done. That's one way to add an impact. At the top, it'll say continue adding impacts. You can just click that hot link. There we go, back to our add impact page. So this time, let's say it was not a listed activity that we did. It was something else. So we pick our date. It gives us a calendar. Let's say February 14th. I volunteered same day. It was not a multi-day activity. And I volunteered 2 hours. Type of activity. Oh, I was doing something for my club. What was it? I don't know. It was Valentine's Day. Maybe I was making cards, but I don't have to tell you it's not required. I'm just looking for all those little required, teeny tiny required asterisks. See that? There's one there. There's one there. There's one on the date. So wherever you see that asterisk, you fill something out. From there, though, we can skip all the way down to the bottom and add impact. And there it is. Now, what if you've been saving them up? Maybe you want to enter all of your volunteer activities in the month of February. Okay, we go back to our add more impacts link here at the top. And this time we use the timesheet function. If I click timesheet, I get my options. Still, we have these little required asterisks. They're small, look hard. But before we get to those, I want to point out that the verifier listed here is me, and that's my email. So please don't change that. I will do all the verifying for our county 4-H. Just leave it in there. Timesheet details. Oh, what am I going to do? Let's say this is my Give Pulse persona, Betty. Betty's February hours. Okay, and I can put in as many as I want. If I fill up all of these lines, I can add more. But maybe I want to start with my February 4th mystery activity. What did we say? I did 2 hours. And here's where I answer that activity type question. So I said it was a club activity, yes. But unlike with entering a single impact, in this box, I have to click the save button down here in the lower right, save. Here's another thing. This include does not have a little asterisk like some of the other columns do. But if I don't include this, it will not be submitted. So I got to click the include box. If I don't click any of these, it will say, hey, you didn't include anything when I try to add my timesheet at the end, submit my timesheet. So I can continue adding all the way down and then scroll to the bottom and submit timesheet. Am I sure? Yes, I'm sure. And there we go. I have submitted it. So that is how to record your impact, aka your volunteer time, with 4-H henceforth. Having trouble? Is it tricky? Don't worry, I will help you. I am so happy to meet you in a Zoom, help you by email, by phone. I will give private lessons. Just let me know what you need and I will help you get your time recorded. Thank you so much, volunteers, for taking the time to get updated for the 2022-2023 4-H year. Be sure to get credit for this required annual training by recording your participation at givepulse.com. The volunteer update is a listed event. If you need help, just let me know.